Hello fear seekers, and welcome back to the channel. We've all heard of tarot, crystals, and spirit boards, items that act as conduits between our world and the paranormal. But what about individuals that seem capable of tapping into the spiritual plane directly and using it for their own ends? Today, we're going to be diving into some creepy, allegedly true, witchcraft horror stories. I can't express how happy I am with the growth of this channel. The more we grow, the more individuals we can reach, and the more first-hand accounts we can collect and explore together. With this in mind, I'd ask that you subscribe to the channel and like the video so we can make that happen together. If you have any scary stories from your own life, feel free to submit them to the email in the description, or send them in to the Fermented Fears Twitter page. I would be honored to read them. Now without further ado, sit back, keep an eye on the skies, and get ready to ferment your fears. Hello all. I'm from Southeast Asia, but with Chinese heritage, so if I make confusing cultural references, please view it from this context. When I was a young girl, my mother would always make the trip to the soothsayer when she goes to the capital. The soothsayer is a small, wrinkly old lady with wispy white hair and a bent back. She lived alone in her old wooden apartment located in the middle of Divisoria, a dirty, bustling commercial district in the city of Manila. I remembered the apartment smelling of old people and incense. Whenever she told her fortunes, the tiny soothsayer would sit on a huge wooden throne and enter into some sort of catatonic state. Her eyes would roll back, her claw-like hands would grasp the arms of the wooden throne, and her head would bob up and down. In the midst of the noise outside, a shaky but commanding voice would give out all sorts of advice. My mother says that it is the god Tantaizi who is speaking through the soothsayer. That is why all her advice and predictions should be taken seriously. To be honest, there are a lot of conflicting things about my mother. That is why at first I found it hard to understand why my mother would make special trips to see the soothsayer. She says she doesn't believe in spirits or ghosts, but she believes in a god possessing this little old lady. She says she is a devout Catholic, but she also believes in this Taoist god called Tantaizi. In any case, my mother has always followed the advice of the soothsayer and got the results that she wanted. My brother and I are the prime examples. After my older sister was born, my mother kept getting miscarriages. She finally bore a boy, but he died within a day of being born. Distraught, my mother sought the advice of the soothsayer. She told my mother that she had offended a spirit and that as long as her child is a boy, she would always lose the baby. They then did some rituals to appease the spirit. The soothsayer then told her to sleep on it, and if my mother dreamt of a red flower, her next child would be a girl. If she dreamt of a white flower, then the spirit had been dealt with and her next child would be a boy. My mother dreamt of a white flower a few nights after performing the ritual, and a few months later, she gave birth to my only brother. When my mother was in her mid-40s, she suddenly wanted another child. She again approached the soothsayer to ask for one. Again, rituals were done, and a few months later she was pregnant with me. I am not sure what my mother did during those rituals, but apparently it made me sensitive to spirits. For most of my childhood, I was not allowed to go near cemeteries. My parents were extremely strict with this rule. I remember that there were many instances where people, or entities, I am not entirely sure, would try to convince me to go with them. They would try to entice me with food or toys, but I would never go with them. This may be connected to my encounters with the shadow people, but who knows? I have encountered shadow people 3 times in my life. The first was when I was 4 years old. I was playing alone behind my school when a lady approached me, trying to get me to go with her. She was entirely black and featureless, almost 2-dimensional. I ran the heck out of there and cried for my nanny. The second time was when I joined a Catholic retreat in high school. It was 5 a.m. and I was the only person awake at the time. I sat down in the middle of the retreat house's flower garden, enjoying the fresh mountain air and the chirping birds. Suddenly, everything went silent and I saw a black humanoid figure approaching me. This time, it was a man. Under the streaming orange lamps, it was entirely pitch black and again, almost 2-dimensional. Of course I ran back to my room, woke up my roommates, and prayed all the prayers I knew by heart until we were called to breakfast. The third and last time was when I was in grad school. It was midnight and I was laying in bed scrolling through Reddit when I spotted something at the foot of my bed. The white fluorescent lamp lit up the whole room, except for the pitch-black humanoid figure standing at the foot of my bed. I hid under the covers and prayed the Our Father and Hail Mary over and over until it disappeared. Now this next part happened all before I was born. Back when my dad used to be a trucker, he would leave us a few days a week to make deliveries to our clients who lived in the mountains of our province. One day, my mother woke up to rude, loud knocks on our door. Through the peephole, she saw that it was my father, back home 2 days early and drenched in sweat. My mom opened the door and greeted him, asking why he was home so early, but my dad just went past her straight to his room. My mom, thinking he was just tired, left him alone. However, my dad was asleep for more than 24 hours. The whole time he would mumble unintelligibly and sometimes would shout, "No, don't take me, I don't want to go with you." My mom, scared out of her wits, called the local Sohano, or witch doctor, to take a look at my dad. He would not wake up at all, but would keep mumbling. The whole time he was drenched in sweat and the room was starting to smell awful. The Sohano tied each of my dad's arms and legs to a bedpost and started his ritual. He recited Catholic prayers while whipping my dad with a buntot engi pagi, or a dried stingray's tail. My dad woke up screaming in tongues. His face was contorted, as if he was burning and in extreme pain. His body then suddenly went erect and he collapsed. The Sohano then wrapped up his ritual and told my mother that the demon had been cast out. My dad slept peacefully for another day. When he woke up, he was surprised to find himself at home. My mom asked him if he had any recollection of what happened to him, and he said the last thing he remembered was driving his truck up in the mountains. My mom never told him what happened, not even in my father's dying days. I have a few more stories, but I think this post is getting too long. These are the more interesting ones anyways. Thank you for reading my stories and making it this far. This is a true story about my mom and how I almost fell victim to la Lechuza. Explained later. This happened when I was only a few weeks old and my mother decided to go to Mexico to show me off to her family who lives there. She decided to go by bus all the way there. When we got there, my mother told me that her family decided to have a big party to celebrate our arrival. When it was over, my grandmother took my mom and I to the guest bedroom where we would be sleeping. My grandma bought an old-school bassinet for me to sleep in while my mother slept in a bed across from me. My mom put me in the bassinet and put 2 small pillows beside me because she was afraid of me accidentally bumping my head. As we got settled, my grandma's Rottweiler named Rocky came in. He didn't want to leave, so he stayed in our room. It was also hot that night, so my mom opened the sliding glass door that led to a balcony to let some air in for the night. We were on the second floor, so she felt safe leaving it open. Soon after that, she got settled in and went to sleep. It was around 3 a.m. when my mom awoke from the loud growls and barks of Rocky. It was strange to her because he had never acted this way. He was a relatively quiet and gentle dog, so this was alarming to her. She then heard me crying louder than usual and rushed to my aid. She was left shocked and speechless as to what she saw, though. I was on my stomach, face down on the little mattress. She immediately picked me up to comfort me and turned her attention to Rocky, who was still growling and barking uncontrollably. He was facing the balcony. My mother turned to see what he was possibly barking at and screamed when she saw it. She explained it as the most ugliest and the most gigantic owl she's ever seen before. Its mouth and wings wide open, and its feathers seemed to be as black as coal. Rocky then ran to the balcony in an attempt to catch it, but the owl quickly flew away, into the darkness. My grandpa, a few minutes later, said he heard a commotion and came to check on us. He found my mother in the middle of the room, on the floor holding me, as if she was shielding me, and Rocky barking into the sky. Later, my grandma was trying to keep my mom from freaking out anymore, when my grandpa came to them and told them that he found a large scratch on my leg. He also pointed out that the pillows that my mother had used to keep my head in place were on the other side of the room, as if they were tossed out of the way. Today, my mother tells me that I survived a kidnapping attempt from La Lechuza. Mexican legend says that La Lechuza is a creature, specifically a witch, who sold her soul to the devil in exchange for power, giving her the ability to transform into a monster, a giant owl. It is said that La Lechuza goes to hunt at night for any potential victims, like animals, even drunk people, but more preferably, children, to snatch and take back to her hut in the mountains, where she would devour or sacrifice them. Whenever I go visit my family, they always call me Lechuzita, as a remembrance for surviving La Lechuza's attempt. The real hero here, though, is my grandma's dog, Rocky. He's the one who stopped the owl from doing anything else and chasing it away. If it wasn't for him, I don't know what else could have happened. Sadly, he passed away this year. I couldn't get to see him beforehand as I live in the US, but I'll always remember him as a hero. My mother bought Rocky at least 10 bags of treats for protecting us that night, the day after the incident. I'm 17 years old today, and I still have a scar on my leg, the same place where that owl scratched me. Though I know logically, kind of, that it could have just been a regular, oddly gigantic owl, but it doesn't explain why it would have come in the house, thrown pillows, and left me face-planted and with a scratch that never healed properly. My story is that I got a highly graphic death vision a few months prior to the events. The vision didn't make any sense. It involved an assault, and I lead a low-risk lifestyle, so I filed it under the random weird stuff category. Then I started becoming ill. A lot. The symptoms were vague enough to be undiagnosable, but nasty enough to keep me nearly bedridden for weeks. I was lethargic, weak. My mom actually said that I seemed to lose my spark, that I used to be a fairly vivacious person, and then suddenly I wasn't. A couple months later, I was at my parents' place. I drank some whiskey, took a big knife, and cut up my arm. Then I just sat there calmly and watched the blood drip, till my partner saw what was happening. I have no explanation for that. I am not into self-harm. There was no real trigger. I don't have any major psychiatric conditions, and it's as if I was in a trance. I still have 3 scars on my arm. The next day, I sustained a major bodily injury out of the blue, and the day after that, I was found unconscious and barely resuscitated in the ambulance. This was pretty much the exact same thing I saw in my vision. My hands started shaking once I realized this, which took a while, since I didn't take the vision seriously to begin with, and half forgot about it. Another week later, I developed a new set of genuinely bizarre symptoms: screaming in my sleep, laughing, and hallucinating. My mom rushed me to the ER again. Another hospitalization. No diagnosis again. In the meantime, my grandmother died. Our relative stabbed my family in the back, and my engagement nearly fell apart. Believe it or not, I was still in denial. I am not suggestible. I am very strong-willed. I am tough and very resilient. I trust my instincts. I am very self-aware. I have wards in my apartment, and I didn't think I'd truly wronged anyone. Another week, I came down with severe abdominal pain 24/7. Not the kind of pain I've ever experienced before. At that point, I began seeking mystical help. An experienced shaman did a depossession ritual and said that my stomach was stuffed with snakes. The pain disappeared literally within an hour. I had a few decent days, though still apathetic and in a lot of pain from the initial bone injury. But not so fast. Another few days later, I developed a constant pain in my back, which spread like wildfire. Suffice it to say, I spent the next 2 months wanting to climb up the wall from pain, despite already being on opiates. The heavy-duty painkillers were not working. The ultrasound I insisted on showed nothing. I actually asked my best friend to look after my mom because I was pretty certain I was going to die very soon, as what I was feeling was very much akin to gradual systemic failure. I gave her instructions as to what to do with my possessions of sentimental value. I was exhausted from pain, barely able to sit up, unable to find a pain-free position even in bed. By that time, I felt like my life turned into an actual horror movie, since as soon as one problem got cleared, something new and medically inexplicable popped up almost right away. Another friend who's a powerful energy worker got involved. The first time she did some work on me, she said my natural light/energy was nearly gone. She kept working on it over the span of several weeks, and things gradually stabilized. I'm finally feeling like myself again. Who did this? Who cursed me? I'll never know for sure. But my main suspect is an egomaniacal occult practitioner who pursued me last year. Since he tried to break up me and my partner, I did not take kindly to that. I rejected him, and then some. Then I kind of forgot about him. But I guess he didn't forget about me. I started renting my home 11 years ago. Before my roommate at the time and I rented it, a family that was originally from Serbia rented it. Both the mother and daughter read coffee grains and tea leaves. They also made potions. Of course, they didn't call them that. The homeowner had a falling out with them, and they were given 30 days to leave. The homeowners are my parents, and it was our rental property. I came with my parents and we started cleaning the mess they had made. That's when I found it. It was what looked like a little doll made with a sock. It had brown yarn hair and a little dress. It had a strange smell to it and looked like it had been burned. I tossed it honestly because it gave me a bad feeling, but also because we were trying to get things cleared out to rip out carpets and paint. Later that day, I was taking the trash to the communal dumpster when my brother snatched the doll out of the trash. We had always joked the woman who lived there was a witch. We cut it open, and it was filled with this nasty-smelling dirt. My brother insisted on burning it. He also told me a story that the woman had told him that witches often changed into moths. Fast forward 6 months, and I'm living in the house, and some weird stuff is beginning to happen. My roommate Joe and I are chilling in the upstairs living room. It's me, his girlfriend, Joe, and a friend of mine. The fireplace was off. The gas to the fireplace was off, and it was September in the desert, so there was no reason we'd need a fire. We were sitting there laughing, and suddenly the fireplace lights up and we hear a popping noise. I immediately put it out. We figured that it was just a glitch and go about our business. However, radios start turning on in the middle of the night. TVs began turning on and off. One day, the disposal turns on when my roommate is washing dishes. The switch is all the way across the counter from him, and he was all alone. I tell my mom, who is more skeptical than Dana Scully, and she writes it off as me smoking too much pot and reading my stories, horror novels. However, she tells me that if it bothers me that much, I should tell the priest. I do tell our priest, and he comes in and blesses the house. After that, nothing at all. Joe moves out. His girlfriend is pregnant and they are going to get married. I need a new roommate, and my brother moves in. About this time, he starts to get really bad dreams about the former residents. The woman's daughter was his age, and he starts to feel like something is drawing him to her. Meanwhile, weird stuff starts happening again, and one night I wake up to screaming. I run upstairs and my brother's standing in the kitchen. There are literally hundreds of huge moths in the house. We let a good friend sage our house after that. My brother's thoughts went away and his dreams stopped, but weird stuff still happens from time to time. And we still occasionally get swarms of moths. I grew up in South Texas, more widely known as the Rio Grande Valley. I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and we all lived with our mom and stepdad in a great big red brick house. It was quite a culture shock moving from the piney woods of East Texas all the way to the flat, desert-like land of the RGV. There were hardly any trees, mostly just palm trees and shrubs. We saw a cactus here and there, and the wildlife consisted mostly of jackrabbits, rattlesnakes, and armadillos. When we started school, we learned quickly that the people there were superstitious, to say the least. I was in 2nd grade when we moved into that house on Jackie Street, and right from the beginning, I felt uneasy. I used to be a happy-go-lucky kid with nothing to worry about. I made friends with all the neighborhood kids, and I even became best friends with a girl who lived directly behind us. She had the most superstitious family out of anyone I had ever met. She was the oldest of 4 girls, and their mother was overly protective, at least in my eyes. She wouldn't even let them watch Harry Potter because it is associated with witchcraft. They went to church 3 times a week, and they didn't even celebrate Halloween. With all that being said, the mom loved to tell ghost stories and Mexican folklores. It was the one cool thing about her, and the thing I loved most about visiting their home. One night, she told us the story of La Mue Lechuza. Basically, in my own words, it's about a witch, or bruja, that can turn into a large owl. Typically, it will transform into an owl with a woman's head, or a large owl the size of a human with a few things that are off-putting. If you see a La Lechuza, you're supposed to pray for your life in Spanish, and it will supposedly leave you alone. It's also been known to make a whistling sound, like a human whistling. If you answer it back with a whistle of your own, the Lechuza will swoop down and carry you away. If you wake up in the morning and see large scratches on your doors or windowsills, it means that the Lechuza was there and is coming for you, so you must prepare yourself accordingly. I can't whistle, and my friend's mom knew this, so she would jokingly tell me I wouldn't have anything to worry about. She would also lovingly tell us my friend and I are gorditas, so we couldn't be carried away as easily. After years of hearing this story in various ways from teachers, other friends' parents, and in books, it was about as stuck in my head as any old wives' tale. I would get excited hearing about it around Halloween at school. It was just another scary story and would give us kids an adrenaline rush. I never thought those stories would one day become a reality for me. It happened in the summer of 5th grade. My best friend and I were on her trampoline. It was summer, so we were up kind of late, maybe around 10 p.m., and it was a full moon. We spent time talking and looking at the stars until we heard whistling. We knew not to whistle back. Instead, we lay there frozen, still looking at the sky and listening intently to the whistling coming from the distance. I look at my friend, and she is paralyzed. She's praying in Spanish and squeezing my hand as tightly as possible. A few minutes go by, and we hear more whistling. Getting closer. My friend stops praying and says we should go inside. I agree without hesitation, and we start inching towards the edge of the trampoline to escape. In that moment, I hear it, and I'll never forget the bone-rattling sound and the twisted image that scarred me for life. We felt the wind from its wings, and saw it just maybe 15 feet above our heads. A huge, snowy white owl, maybe 12 feet wide from wingtip to wingtip, floating right above us. Its eyes were jet black, and it mostly looked like an owl, but its feet were human. It had huge, human feet with long black talons that seemed to twitch as its cold, demonic eyes stared down at its prey. It locked eyes with me, and I let out a screech. My heart jumped up to my neck, and I had never run inside a place so fast. We cried together while praying as we heard it continue to flap around outside. We held on to each other with her rosary in our hands, and continued praying as loudly as we could. All of a sudden, it was gone, on to its next victim. We were too strong for it to take on. We're both terrified of owls to this day. We don't even look at them in books. Every time I see one, I think of the face of the Lechuza, almost human and almost owl. A strange, demonic hybrid not of this world. Believe the tales, don't go outside alone, and never respond to strange whistling. Something just might snatch you up and carry you far, far away. Hey guys, glad to see you made it to the end of the video. Some of those stories shocked me. I, for one, will be keeping my eye out for any suspiciously large owls. If you have a scary story from your own life that you feel needs to be told, submit it by email or to the Fermented Fears Twitter page, and I will do my best to share it with the rest of the community. Alright guys, that just about wraps up the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So long, Fear Seekers. I'll see you in the next video.